All right. Hello, everyone. Can you all see and hear me without any issues? Very good. So another sort of preemptive heads up. I'm still a little bit under the weather, so apologies if I uh, um, well, if this happens, if I have a brain fart. Fortunately, today, well, we're not going to be doing anything too intense. We're going to be talking about the instructions for the essay proposal and the final essay. Yeah, exactly. I don't want to be blarping all over the place. But unfortunately, I don't know. It could happen. This is one heck of a cold. If it is a cold, I don't know. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's strep throat or uh, COVID or something. I don't know what it is, but all I know is I want it to be over. Oh, definitely not allergies. Yeah. No. I wish it was just allergies. Um, the reason I'm doing this now is because I want you all to have um, a really good idea of what both of these assignments entail, what is expected of you, and how you'll be evaluated. Um, and we're getting right around the middle of the term, right? So I figure that the proposal is due, if I'm not mistaken, the 1st of August, somewhere around there. The idea is we'll evaluate your proposal and give you lots of feedback, and you'll get that returned to you before on or about the last day of class. And then you have the exam period to turn that into your final essay. That's the idea. Um, yeah, so I have not, I'll be honest, I haven't looked at those yet. I've been sick. It was the weekend. We're going to try and get it done as soon as we can, but I have not. I'll be marking some examples for the TAs today. Um, so right. The first things first. The research topic or research essay topic proposal, which will be due by 11:59 p.m. on August 1st. It's worth quite a big chunk of your grade, right? Even though Um, the length requirements are not as it doesn't have to be as long as like your reflection assignments. It is worth more because it sort of serves as the foundation for your research paper. Speaking of those word limits, you're going to aim for about 500 to 600 words. You can write more than that. Don't write less than that. It's always fine. I don't mind if people go over the word limit as long as there's no unnecessary repetition, obviously. But you should never go under the word limit. And I'll tell you more about the different parts of this momentarily so that you know what it is you're actually doing. But just keep this word limit in mind. 500 words for a lower limit, 600 for an upper limit, which you can go over. I have a template which is available in the helpful materials module. So I would download that template and use that. In fact, I expect that you use that. I don't want to see the template not being used. I'll just put it that way. As a matter of fact, let me show you how to access that. So if we hop on over to Brightspace, let's go to Course Home and we go to Helpful Materials, right down at the bottom. You can see here we have our course outline and we have some templates here. So this is the essay proposal template. And you can open that up and you'll see it's basically like fill in the blanks for this bit where you have to give me your name and student number. So put your name, put your student number, put the assignment due date. So that's August 1st. Make sure you don't change this, right? Keep the course code and my name the same. Um, Keep this. Anything in brackets you're going to delete after you filled it out. So once you've come up with a working title, delete this. Don't leave that in. Then you've got your area of interest, which basically you're going to tell me about the specific area of philosophy of mind that you're interested in writing about. Um, you could You could ask me for a topic. You could come up with something new, right? We'll do some brainstorming for topics at the end of this lecture, but this is where you're going to tell me um, what your essay will be about, essentially. This is where you'll give me your thesis statement or your research question and answer, and then you'll sketch out a plan of attack for your paper. And references go here. Um, yes, keep the titles, but delete the instructions. So anything in square brackets, get rid of those. So this stuff here, right, like these instructions, this outline of the grades right here, get rid of that. Keep this keep where it says references, right? Where it says plan of attack, thesis, etc. Keep all of that. Yeah. No, it's a good question. So that's what the template looks like, and that's how to get it. And I expect that everybody um, will use the templates. It just makes everybody's lives easier. If you can remember, um, double space. Um, it's not absolutely necessary, but it is a little bit easier on the eyes, right? Because we're reading all of this off of a screen. So if you don't remember to do it double spaced, no big deal. But if you do, my eyes will thank you, as will the eyes of our teaching assistants. Um, you're going to include a preliminary bibliography or references section. It doesn't have to be exhaustive, but uh, you're going to want to have chosen a couple of sources for your proposal. It's easy to do that. You can use the textbook. And what's very helpful, I think, are the recommendations, for further reading at the end of each chapter. And a lot of those that's where I get my supplemental readings from. I draw them from Kim's suggested, further readings. Um, I would say for the proposal, it would probably be a good idea to have anywhere from 3 to 5 sources identified. Um, and then for your essay, it's always good to have more sources. So try and get more if you can, but 3 to 5 is a good start. And you can use the library website. Um, look look at again at the end of the chapters in our textbook. Um, recommendations for further reading. JSTOR is good. Google Scholar is good, right? And when you submit your proposal, of course, you will also be required to submit proof of student work. So, what you need to be doing is saving a couple of drafts of your work as you go that clearly show the progress that you're making. So you'll submit, I'd say 3 or 4 drafts and a final draft. There's no need to put them all into a zip file or anything. In fact, please don't do that because that makes it that gives us extra work to do. You can simply select all of your drafts plus the final draft and drag them into the Dropbox and submit them that way. That is absolutely fine. But we need that proof of work. Um, so again, these drafts have to show me the progress you're making. Sometimes I have in other classes I've had one final draft and one early draft, and the early draft is almost identical to the final. I will not give you a grade for that, right? I will withhold your grade until I know that there's adequate proof of work available. Um, so it's basically an automatic 0 if you don't submit proof of work or if your proof of work doesn't clearly show your progress from beginning the assignment to the end of the assignment. And the reason has to do with, of course, generative AI, right? Um, we, we're not going to be, we're not trying to be mean about this. We'll probably give you comments, like we'll give you feedback comments, but we won't give you a grade. So make sure that your proof of work clearly shows the progress you went through in going from just starting the assignment to the final draft. And of course, if anything is handed in late, there will be a penalty unless you speak to me. So that's 10% per day out of 100, unless you contact me before the assignment is due. So if you were to go, otherwise going to get 90% out of 100 and it's a day late, well, now it's 80 out of 100. Now that said, I think you all know, especially those of you who have had a class with me before, that I tend to be pretty accommodating. So I understand, especially during the summer, that things come up, right? It's not just like illness and bereavement, the serious stuff, but you can have other personal emergencies arise. You can have like mechanical difficulties with your computer. Maybe you're traveling. Maybe you're going to see your family, or maybe you're going to some kind of extracurricular event or something. Like, that's fine. I'll work with you, but please, just let me know before the assignment is due that you need extra time. And by before the assignment is due, I mean like not on the day it's due. Um, because I've been that's been happening a lot lately. Um, and I don't know whether it's a summer thing or not, but I'm getting like it's stated in the course outline, for example, that I generally don't respond to emails after 5 p.m. or on weekends. So you don't want to be asking me for an extension, at 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night on the evening that this thing is due, because I'm not going to answer you. I'm not checking my email in the evening. So you've got to let me know. As soon as you know that you need extra time, let me know. I'll work with you. Like I'll be as fair as I can. I just need to know what's going on. Okay? So, what does proposal entail? Well, like I said before, when we were looking at the template, um, there's an area of interest that you have to identify. There's a You can do this second bit one of two ways. You can give me a thesis statement or an intended thesis statement, or a research question and the answer to that research question. And then you can tell me about your plan of attack. So, what could your area of interest be? Really, it could be anything related to what we're learning about. So, anything at all to do with the philosophy of mind. And I would aim for about a paragraph here, or maybe two, like one large paragraph, two smaller paragraphs. You want to indicate why this is interesting to you. So don't just tell me what it is you're going to write about. Tell me why you want to write about it, right? So, what are some things we could write about? Just to get the ball rolling in terms of some early brainstorming, right? We're talking about the mind, we're talking about the mental. Remember that philosophy of mind uh, is all about asking fundamental questions or exploring fundamental issues concerning the mental with minds. So, what kinds of things could we talk about? Yeah, absolutely, Lee. Yeah, why substance dualism is wrong would be a pretty. I mean, that's kind of like how Kim writes the textbook, right? Um, yeah, you could write about free will. Absolutely. Because free will is related to the mental. Yeah, could a machine be conscious? That would make an excellent research question, Paul. So you would want to, I would say, like, actually, all of these would make excellent research questions. Yeah, you could explore Plato's chariot analogy of the soul. Absolutely. So these would all be fair game. Um, Neuro and psych material. Yeah, absolutely. Um, that would be kind of like a cognitive science sort of paper, but I'll allow it because I am one of those, right? Um, and I also think that you shouldn't be afraid of including empirical work, like in your discussion. I think good philosophy of mind should be empirically informed, just like good psychology or good neuroscience is sensitive to the philosophical questions involved, right? Yeah, Holly, that's fine. Samantha says, I've been reading a lot about the fundamental marks of the mental, etc. Okay. Curiosity is okay, that would be cool. So if you wanted to sort of introduce and defend this notion that curiosity defined in some maybe technical sense could be a mark of the mental. Yeah, all of these are good. And I think all of these examples just go to show you the possibilities that you have, right? When it comes to what you want to write about. Um, there are a lot of possible topics. Really, as long as they have something to do with the mind, I'll probably allow it, right? And keep in mind, the reason why the reason why we do this proposal is so that if you're going off in some weird direction, I can like steer you back to where I think it would be better for you to go, right? Joshua is interested in machines and whether there can be human minds and mechanical bodies. Yeah, well, that's really interesting because, I mean, that's not really, I mean, that's kind of been done, right? Just probably not in the way that you're thinking, right? I mean, that's Descartes. Descartes, we've got an immaterial mind and a material body, and for Descartes, the body is a machine. It is a very, very complicated natural machine, right? But now there are new iterations of this question, like um, could we upload our minds to a robot body or something like that? Or could we maybe take a disembodied brain and put that in a robot body? Right? So, if you're going to do something really like kind of on the bleeding edge of like AI or robotics, it's always a good idea to try and tie it back to some of those classic philosophical questions about the mind, like the mind-body problem, right? So yeah, Joshua, that would be fine. Absolutely fine to write about that. So yeah, really, I think you can see, right? Like anything related to the themes of the class, in about a paragraph, maybe one long paragraph or two short paragraphs, right? And then you want to identify your research question or a thesis statement. Just an example, right? A lot of you had great examples for research questions. This one here is substance dualism a good way to explain the mental? Um, if you decide to frame all of this in terms of a research question, you need to tell me how you plan on answering that question right away, right? This is like probably the biggest mistake people make on an assignment like this. It's like, oh, I'll do the research question approach. Here's my question. And then they leave it there. That's not enough. You have to tell me how you're going to answer it. And the rest of the answer is about defending and supporting your answer, right? And basically, the answer to your research question is your thesis statement. So notice here this thesis statement that I have on the screen, which captures your argument, reads, I will argue that substance dualism fails as a theory of the mental. Well, that's just an answer to my research question, right? And then the rest of the essay is about explaining to the reader or convincing the reader that you have answered the question correctly. And then, so once you've identified a research question or a thesis statement, tell me your plan of attack. Your plan of attack, I would aim for, again, one long paragraph or two smaller paragraphs. You want to tell me, you want to kind of sketch out your argument, right? And I'll tell you more about this as we go. But yeah, you want to tell me what kind of argument you're going to make, how you are going to use the sources that you've gathered so far. Um, don't tell me things like, I'm going to go to the library and look at sources, right? Surprisingly, people do that. They say, I will use the Carleton University Library to find academic papers. Okay, yeah, that you don't need to tell me that. That's assumed. You need to tell me what sources you've got so far and how you're going to use them. Um, no, no. Avoid point form. That's a good question. Don't use point form. I want whole sentences. In fact, people who write their plans of attack in point form tend to do very poorly. because the plan of attack is not fleshed out, right? Yeah. We'll get to that, Hayden, but basically it's whatever you want. You can use I, you can use we. It doesn't matter. I don't care. I think this aversion to the first person pronoun is actually an English studies thing. In philosophy, we use the first person pronoun all the time. Um, so I'll say more about your plan of attack and what should go in it as we proceed. Does anyone have any other questions before I talk about the essay? Okay. So the essays are due on August 23rd, 1 minute before midnight. Um, hmm, you mean, Holly, you mean using those as sources? I would shy away from them. Yeah. I wouldn't use TED Talks. Like you can use lectures, but I don't know if I'd call a TED Talk a lecture. So, yeah, like Leo says, I would use their actual research. Yeah. But I'm going to talk about what kind of evidence is acceptable to use. So, yeah. So 11:59 p.m. on August 23rd. That's the last day of the exam period, right? So, the idea is we mark your stuff, get it back to you real quick, and then you turn that into your paper. In fact, you should be able to take your proposal and our feedback and rewrite the proposal so that it's the first part of your essay, right? The essay is worth 45%. Again, late submissions are going to be penalized unless I hear from you. And you've got to submit proof of student work, right? And this is easy to do. Just save, if you spend, let's say you take 1 week to turn your proposal into your paper, and you do some writing every other day. So just save your work at the end of every day and save it as a separate file, draft one, draft two, draft three, final draft. That's all you need to do. And some people say, well, Professor, I like to write it all in one go. Um, well, that's a terrible idea. You probably shouldn't do that. And also, one of the reasons I do it this way is to disincentivize writing your essay all in one shot because it's not a good way to write an essay, right? Um, you should be writing and then taking a break, stepping back and reviewing what you've written, improving it, then going on to write the next bit, etc. So, um, and I assume you all should be familiar with like the file folder system and how to save drafts, right? Because surprisingly, people don't seem to be as up to snuff on this as they were in the past. I think it's probably because of these things, right? But before smartphones, when everybody's primary computer was a PC or a Mac, you had to have some idea how to save different files, right? So, do we all know how to do that? I would say like if you are really set on if you're really set on using Google Docs, then yeah, that's fine, Lee. Yeah. Yeah, save as instead of saving. So you're going to save as and you're going to give it a name. Make a little folder on your desktop, right, that says essay, and then you can save draft 1, draft 2, draft 3, final draft, right? Yeah, Joshua, do that too. Like if you work for a day, then download that, save it as your draft whatever, and then the next day pick it up on Google Docs. Just because it's surprising. Like I do get a lot of questions. How do I do this? I just want to make sure everybody knows how to do it. Um, and you've got to do it. You've got to submit proof of student work, or I will not mark it. All right. This kind of goes for the proposal as well as the final draft. There's no, or the final paper. There's no template for the final paper because, again, you're going to take your proposal and turn that into the start of your final paper. So, your first draft of the final essay could really just be a rewritten version of your proposal. Like take out the various subheadings, address whatever feedback, whatever criticisms, whatever comments you've been given, fix everything all up. That's your first draft. And then start writing from there, right? Obviously, it's got to be typed, right? Because we're doing it all online. Double spaced, please. If you remember to do a double spaced, please, that would be so great. 11, 12 point font, whatever the defaults are and the templates I've provided. It's got to be submitted in Doc or DocX or PDF, failing that, as with your proof of work, because I can't open other kinds of files. And I'm not going to chase you down um, to submit in a different file format if I get the wrong one. It is incumbent upon you to make sure that you submit your work in the proper file format. You've, of course, got to make sure you've got either a references section or a bibliography in both the proposal and the final essay. Maybe we should talk about the difference between the two. Who knows the difference between a references section and a bibliography? No, actually, Lily, that works as a draft too. Like you could do that, like a little handwritten idea map. Um, Submit that along with all your other drafts. Like that's great. Yeah. If I wouldn't avoid this, if this helps you, then do it and show me what you've done. Yeah. Yeah, so like a bibliography is like everything you've read for the pet for your essay, even if you haven't cited it. And references is just the stuff that you actually cite. It's up to you which one you want to do. But if I have a bibliography, I will have books in there maybe that I've read, but that I've not cited directly, right? And a references section is only going to be what I've cited. So that's the difference. Whichever one you use, you want to make sure, excuse me, that you cite everything properly because you want to avoid plagiarism. So obviously, any and all use of ChatGPT to write your essay is plagiarism. Um, I won't go through this. Well, I mean, we all have a pretty good idea of what constitutes plagiarism, right? But if you reproduce or paraphrase bits of someone else's work and present those ideas as your own, that's plagiarism. If you submit something written by someone else, that's plagiarism. Using ideas that are not your own without appropriate acknowledgement is plagiarism. Data or research findings, that doesn't really apply in a class like this, but um, there is this point here is kind of like just improper citation, which is not plagiarism. Um, if you forget to include a page number or close a quotation mark or something, right? I'm not going to accuse you of plagiarism, right? But that is improper citation, and that is a problem. The reason why you need to make sure you're citing everything properly is so that it's really clear which ideas are yours and which ideas are not yours, and so that you're giving credit to the authors of the ideas that are not your own. So that's why this is so important, right? Um, If, I mean, I can't deal with plagiarism just as an instructor on my own. If if I am suspicious that some plagiarism has occurred, what I have to do is file an academic misconduct report. That goes to the chair of the philosophy department, and then the chair takes it to the dean, and then a decision is made, and then some consequences can be handed down. It might be if you're found to have plagiarized, then you might fail the assignment. You might fail the class, depending on whether it's your first offense or a very severe offense. And importantly, academic misconduct reports go on your transcript. And so that will follow you around, right? Uh, if you want to go to graduate school and you have an academic offense on your transcript, that's not going to look good in your application. And depending on, where you're applying, some employers also want information like transcripts. You probably don't want an academic offense appearing on there. So I follow a simple rule of thumb. If you're not sure, just cite it. When in doubt, cite. You need to cite whenever you're referring to an idea that is not your own. So I like APA citation style for this, but don't feel like you have to use APA if you're used to something else. Um, just use whatever style you're most comfortable with, and please use Purdue's OWL or Online Writing Lab to look up how to cite things in your particular style. I get a lot of questions like, "Hey, professor, how do I cite this?" Um, it's actually your job to make sure that you are citing things properly. Remember my story time with Professor Josh? Back in the day, if you took a class, you'd buy your textbook, but you'd also be required to buy a little style manual for all the different, classes you were taking. So I remember my first year as an undergrad, I had a Chicago manual for my history class. I had an MLA manual for my English class, an APA manual, I believe, for my philosophy class. And you had to learn that stuff on your own. Um, Same here. But now it's all there in one handy resource. That's Purdue University's online writing lab. So click this link. This link is also available in the helpful materials module. And no matter what style you want to use, you'll probably be able to find the guide there. And it will tell you how to cite books, how to cite papers, how to cite lectures, how to cite anything you can think of. Basically, there is a way of citing it, right? Another, I think, probably good practice to keep in mind is that when you are quoting or paraphrasing, say you're working in APA, your in-text citation is going to need an author's last name, a year of publication, and the page numbers if it's a book or a periodical. When you're just referring to an idea that's not your own, you don't need page numbers, but you do need to reference the source properly. So if it were a book or something or a journal article, again, author's last name and year of publication, you put the full information in your references or references section or your bibliography, whichever one you're using. Um, this is a question I get a lot of. Can I use generative AI, not obviously not to write my paper, but can I use generative AI at all? And well, obviously, forget about using it to write anything. That's why you're providing proof of work. Like I really hope. I know this is more a problem with first year students. Just from my own experience, first year students come in and just use Chat GPT like they think it's fine and they're not going to get in trouble for it. And a lot of them are in for a rude awakening. So by second year, and I know a lot of you are second year second year, third year, maybe even fourth year, you're probably not going to want to use ChatGPT to write the essay for you. But some of you might want to use it to edit your paper or to come up with an idea for your paper or to do research for your paper. So, what do I think of that? Well, I strongly discourage using generative AI to edit your paper. Um, the reason is that you could still accidentally plagiarize something, right? Even with Grammarly, right? This stuff is everywhere. It's kind of being rammed down all of our throats. Like if I open Microsoft, now all of a sudden I have Grammarly with AI and like I don't want that. Um, yeah. Yeah, Liam, I'm not surprised. I don't know why they're allowed to get away with it in high school, but it is such a bad idea. It's such a bad idea. And I mean, it's not the same as using a calculator in math class, right? I get this like, well, what about calculators? Well, calculators, you're only implementing a procedure on a calculator, right? An essay is supposed to be original work. Um, right? So it's really like the worst thing you can do to use generative AI to write a paper. But don't use it to edit your paper either, because you could accidentally plagiarize something. Because the generative AI is basically just a big giant plagiarism machine. Oftentimes, the output that it gives you is not even original. A lot of the times it's actually just verbatim copied and pasted from something that the model has read or perhaps something it's been trained on. And I've noticed this myself when I use Google AI. Like if you know how Google sometimes gives you if you type in something in a Google search and it'll give you an AI summary. I've noticed that some of what it says in that summary is just word for word what's in some of the sources that it's referring me to. It's not even coming up with anything new. It's not paraphrasing it in an original way. It is just plagiarizing, you know? Yeah. Well, I understand. Liam, I've seen some pieces on the news recently about adapting to, the age of AI and using, teaching students how to use it as a research tool or a search tool. And I think that's one thing. I think students are going to have to be literate about the proper uses for this stuff. But it just boggles my mind that that it would be used for doing the work for you and that teachers wouldn't be more. I don't know. I mean, that's why I require proof of work. I'm trying to make it as hard to do this by using generative AI as possible. Um, oh, really? Get rid of those stupid stuff. Yeah, I would love that, Lee. Because I hate that. I hate it. I mean, there are some interesting things that I like AI for, but mm, yeah, I haven't heard of this, Hayden, but sounds like something I might want to look further into. Universal design for learning. Interesting. Yeah, it's true. I mean, I didn't want to change it. I had to change. I had to change how I'm doing things because of generative AI. There's no choice. I can't do quizzes, like online quizzes. Forget it. I can't do those because probably a third to a quarter to a third of my students cheat. Like, I just can't do it. It's got to be, if it's a quiz, it's got to be in person, right? Um, yeah, that's true, Liam. But yeah, Lee, provide that. I think that would be really cool if you could drop that in the Discord server. Um, mm, oh, yeah, I didn't know you could do that, Leo. I'm going to do that. Um, yeah, and that's the problem. Yeah, teachers, I mean, I don't think teachers are paid enough to care enough. I mean, I think they do care, right? But if the school board and the Ministry of Education, if they don't care, why should the teacher care, right? You know what I mean? Like I know the teachers do care. But if the rest of the system doesn't care, what do you do? Right? I get it. I do get that. But and that's why I'm kind of very open about all of my qualms with AI, right? I'm like, guys, just look, for the love of Pete, you know, you're here to learn. I'm here to teach you. Please don't use it. Like, you're paying thousands of dollars in tuition to be here to develop certain skills. Don't not do that by using generative AI, please. The only one who loses in that situation is you, right? Yeah, the system will catch up, but you know. So anyway, you can see why I discourage the use of AI for editing, right? Not to get too far off topic here. I think it's probably better if you have a human being help you edit your paper. And there's a couple of ways you can do that, right? There's writing services. So if you're on campus, you can go to writing services in the library, and you can sit down with somebody and look at your paper. I'm not sure if this service is also offered virtually, but I imagine there's something like that. But it's always better to have a human help you, I think. You can also help each other out, right? Um, in academia, we have a little something called peer review, right? Where if I want to publish a paper, that is read and critiqued by some anonymous experts, and then they'll put their comments on it, and then it comes back to me, and I have to address what they've said, right? You can do something similar. You can do your own sort of peer review using the Discord server. Somebody might want to have someone else read over their paper to look out for typos, or to have a look at the grammar. Um, Someone looks over your paper, you look over their paper, right? Um, that's fine. I encourage that. No, Liam, they don't have to be cited, but I think it's nice if you acknowledge, if you put an acknowledgement, like a little footnote, like, I, Johnny student, would like to thank Sally Study Pants for reading my paper, for her helpful comments, right? Like, just do that. It's nice to do that. It's not citation, it's just acknowledgement. Um, oh, good point, Lee. Okay, so Lee says writing service won't proofread the final. They'll help you structure arguments or write an outline. Yeah. Well, yeah, we could do that. I don't know if I want to organize that. I maybe I'm sounding grumpy because I'm still sick, but I really think this is something best left to you guys. Um, some people also don't want to do this, right? And that's fine. Like when I was an undergrad, I actually found it. Yeah, whoever's interested, yeah, I would allow that and even encourage that. Not everyone's going to go in for it, right? When I was a student, I hated having to do this. At least in my early days, I did, and then eventually, I ended up actually volunteering in a writing services drop-in center. But I didn't like other people reviewing my work because I didn't need that. Um, and if you're one of those people, what you can do is print out your paper and read it out loud with your own eyes, and speak it out loud. Don't just read it in your head. Read it out loud. You will catch typos and mistakes that you never would have noticed if you're just reading it in your mind on a computer screen. But yeah, coordinate. Use that. This is what the Discord server is for. Exactly. Like, use the Discord server, figure out like who wants to read papers, who wants to have their papers read. Excuse me. Holly's got an interesting remark. I think there's also a very real pressure to get good grades and appear intelligent and perfect. Certainly. I get it. I see mistakes in prior essays I've written and I cringe. But in another class I'm taking, we spent time talking about how not being perfect is part of the learning process, and that's okay. Yeah, that's good advice, Holly. In fact, a lot of people, I think, sometimes I get, everybody marks things differently, and I'm not the most difficult marker. Um, but you do really have to impress me to get an A plus, and I get students that email me like, "Why didn't I do better?" And it's like, listen, you didn't do bad. You know, like somebody gets a B plus when they wanted an A, and like, look, a B plus isn't bad. Um, you know, um, Making mistakes is part of the process, right? That's how you learn. Like you're exactly right, Holly. Um, and also keep in mind, like, if you're maybe a bit shy about sharing a draft with another student, to proofread, like, don't worry if you think some of it might be really bad. Like, don't worry. Like, you should all be very, kind and charitable and respectful. I've encouraged you to be nice when you're giving feedback. And I will commit to doing that too, right? I mean, when my TAs and I give you feedback for your proposal and for your essay, it's going to be constructive. We're going to always apply the principle of charity. So we're going to assume that there is as much truth in what you're saying as possible. Um, Yeah, like we're going to try. We're not going to give you those snarky comments, you know, um, that some professors might leave. Uh, we're going to try to really, give you what you need to take your proposal with our feedback, with our comments, and turn that into a really good paper. Um, So, big long digression here, but the point is, don't use generative AI to edit your paper. Get a human classmate or a human friend to help you with that. Um, I will uh, I will hesitantly allow you to use generative AI to conduct research or to come up with a topic, right? So if you're really stuck, you're like, I have no idea what to write about. You can use generative AI as a sort of sounding board, right? Um, but if just like with if another student reads your paper and you want to give them an acknowledgement for helping edit your paper, I would also like you to acknowledge that you came up with your idea using ChatGPT or whatever as a sounding board. um, this is not a trap. Okay, it's not a plagiarism trap. I just want you to like, look, I came up with this idea talking to ChatGPT for 15 or 20 minutes, bouncing some ideas around, and I came up with this idea that way. That's fine. I think that's one of the good uses of this technology, right? No, because I mean that's a good question, Push, but you never know if it's going to accidentally plagiarize something, right? You don't want it to do any writing or editing. Yeah, I wouldn't use it that way. I would try instead, you know what I would do? I would bounce ideas off a friend, maybe, right? Um, generative AI is also, and my whole spiel about this, but again, it's like the computer on the Starship Enterprise on, like Star Trek: The Next Generation or something. It's something you can talk to in natural language to help you solve problems. You don't have to type it in code, or write a script or point and click with a mouse. You can just talk to it as if you would a person. Um, so it can be really helpful in doing research. I've actually used ChatGPT this way to try and identify bits of media that I have seen that I can't remember the name of. And it is surprisingly good at this, right? Like I'll be like, I saw this movie and it was about this and it had this guy in it and I can't remember what it was called and I describe it and ChatGPT gives me a list of possibilities and then I go and check and oh, it was that one, right? In a similar vein, you could use ChatGPT to identify some good sources, but you have to remember that ChatGPT isn't always reliable. It hallucinates, right? It makes stuff up. So you still have to use your own research skills to verify what it's telling you, right? Yeah, or like Google Scholar. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, yeah. No, oh, you found an old children's book that way. Yeah, yeah. I found a horror movie that I couldn't remember the name of. I found an old anime that I couldn't remember the name of. It's actually quite impressive. The way it works that way. Yeah, that's a good way to come up with a title. What Liam says, like try and summarize what your paper is all about in 10 words. You can do it that way. There's a lot of ways to do it, right? Um, so, you can use it as a sounding board, but acknowledge that you've used it. You can use it as a research tool, but remember, it is a tool. It is an assistant. You can't rely on it to do the work for you because it's going to get it wrong. Um, we're all aware of the fact that sometimes generative AI hallucinates. I saw it put another way recently. Um, it hallucinates all the time. That's how it works. It's just that a lot of the time it's right? Because that's how these things work, right? They're stochastic parrots, right? They simply um, put the statistically most likely word next and keep doing that. Just based on how they've been trained and the prompt you've given them. The response is just built one word at a time at the word that's statistically the most likely word to come next in the sentence. ChatGPT doesn't know anything, right? ChatGPT is a lot like the person in John Searle's Chinese room thought experiment, which we'll talk about later in the course, right? Yeah, so confidently wrong. If for those that were in my philosophy of the paranormal class last semester, you'll know what I'm going to say here, but I thought, oh, I'll use it to rearrange a spreadsheet, because we did a little experiment in the class where we looked at how belief changed in paranormal phenomena over the course of learning about them. And I tried to, I just had to rearrange my data a bit, and ChatGPT just could not do it. And someone said, I think maybe it was even Holly, who's with us now. They described it as like a really terrible intern. Like I'd be like, okay, rearrange so that the data look like this, and it's like, okay, here you go, and all of the it's all the data is just zero or the number eight. Yeah, Holly remembers. Yeah, and I would say, okay, no, you've changed all the data. All the data is wrong or messed up. But, oh, shucks, you're right. Let me fix that, and it goes and comes back, and it's even worse, right? All of this talk of being on the cusp of the singularity is nonsense as far as I'm concerned. I can't even get Chat GPT to reorganize a spreadsheet. Like we're nowhere near the singularity. Yeah, Elon Musk is full of it. Anyway, uh, that goes to show you that it is a tool. It is not it is not going to satisfactorily do the work for you if you're going to use it for research purposes. You still have to use your human research skills, but you can use it that way. All right. I wonder how far along we are here. Um, 9 out of 22. Let's go for a little bit more and then take a break. I might take a couple shorter breaks because my voice is giving out. if that's okay with everybody. What kind of paper can you write? These are a number of different kinds of papers, like a survey paper. Oh, really? Oh, so you were trying to do some statistics, Holly, with it. Okay, and yeah, so your team was like, nah, just trust the computer. But you were like, no, it's just making, I mean, probably it was just making that number up, right? Like and this is the thing, like the trust that we can have for a calculator or a program like SPSS gives us a false sense of trust in generative AI. I mean, generative AI does not work the same way as SPSS. SPSS is a symbol system. It's a series of production rules. Yeah, that's terrible. But yeah, like you cannot have the same confidence you can in ChatGPT as you cannot have the same confidence in ChatGPT as you do something like SPSS or JASP, right? Because those things don't hallucinate and ChatGPT does. And it's because it's a different kind of system. This is why AI literacy is very important, people. Um, yeah. Yeah, you argue with it. It gaslights you a little bit, and then finally it admits, "Oh, yes, you're right." Like, you know. Yeah, exactly. Ah, that's amazing, Leo, hallucinating the yeah. So be careful, guys. Be careful, everyone. Um, okay, I think I'll just cover this slide, then we'll maybe take a 10-minute break. Um, there's a few different kinds of essays you can write. Okay, you can write a survey paper. Yeah, Liam. Yeah, that basically that's where I was going with it. Yeah. Uh, a survey paper outlines or surveys a topic a bit like a literature review. Now, you're going to have to do some of this in your paper, but your paper can't be exclusively survey because you have to make an argument or answer a research question and then show the reader why you've got the correct answer, right? So there's a few different ways you can do that. You can have a positive argument. That's where you're arguing for a particular position. A negative argument is when you're arguing against a position. And an adjudicative argument is when you're sort of trying to decide between multiple different possible answers. Um, um, you're going to want to put this in your plan of attack, right? Push says, I remember one time I had the solution to something beside me and I asked it to explain it and it would use random numbers and just say the solution. Yeah, I don't think ChatGPT is very good at explaining itself because it doesn't really have like inner states to explain. I mean, this would actually be a good essay topic. What makes ChatGPT different than traditional AI or a human mind? And you could talk about it in terms of mental states, mental representations, cognitive architecture. That would be really cool. Well, I don't know. Maybe 2,000 words instead of 1,800, go up to 2,000. Don't hand in like a 3,000 word paper though, because like that's just too much. Um, the poor teaching assistants, they'll be like, "Oh no, why do I have to read so many?" That's like two essays right there. Don't go that far, but maybe like 500 words over the upper limit if you really need to do that. Again, another thing about writing an essay is that, it's an exercise in learning how to be concise. The more you can say with fewer words, the more concise you are, right? But yeah, I guess around 400 or 500 words over the upper limit is probably okay as long as there's no unnecessary repetition. So, yeah, in your plan of attack, tell me what kinds of things you will survey, and then tell me whether you're going to give me a positive, a negative, or an adjudicative argument. That's a good thing to put in your plan of attack. And in your survey, you can mention, some of the sources you're going to be using. You're going to be like, you don't have to just list them. That's what your references section is for. But you can say, like, oh, I'm going to use Jaegwon Kim's book to explain mind body dualism. And then I'm going to use Descartes' Meditations on First Philosophy to sort of expand on I'm going to use the original source, right? And then I'm going to use the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy article on Descartes to explain this. And, you know, um, yeah, yeah, that would be cool, Hayden. Yeah, like if you wanted to, yeah, yeah, that would be cool. I would allow that. I would put that in an appendix in your paper. So you'd have your references section, and then you'd have like Appendix 1, my transcript of my conversation with ChatGPT. Um, yeah. Holly, don't worry about it. Yeah. Yeah, Holly wrote a longer paper, but it was a very good paper. So, it's fine, just within reason. Um, okay, my voice is giving out, so I think we're going to take a 10-minute break, and then we'll come back and do some more. Uh, See if we can get through it all, or if we need to take another break. So I'll see you all at 3:45. Does that sound good? Excellent. Okay, I will see you shortly. All right, let's get back to it. Um, yeah, so on slide 10, this is basically like a caution against the 5 paragraph essay. Now, I know that, like when you're in high school, this is how they teach you to write an essay. Intro, 3 body paragraphs, and a conclusion. But this really is just a teaching tool. And I know that a lot of you will know that. Like if you're in the humanities or the social sciences, right? You know that, right? But if you're coming from maybe a more of a scientific background where you're not writing essays, you might be thinking, oh, well, I'll just write a 5 paragraph essay. But we don't want to do that, right? 5 paragraph essay is merely a teaching tool. Um, yes, your paper is going to need an introductory paragraph and a concluding paragraph, but you don't want to limit yourself to 3 body paragraphs because you're either going to have an essay that's way too short or you're going to have an essay that meets the length requirements, but all of the paragraphs are going to be much too long. Um, so use as many paragraphs as you need to. Uh, a paragraph, by the way, in an essay like this, the body paragraphs should be like steps in your argument. If your intro is like the bottom of the staircase and the conclusion is the top, your paragraphs are the steps you take to get you there. So each paragraph should be somewhat self-contained, right? Um, think of it like one idea per paragraph. Maybe one paragraph is going to be dedicated toward explaining a certain term or concept or thinker. Another paragraph might be explaining, a different term or concept, and linking it with the first one, right? So think of paragraphs as the steps that get you from your introduction to your conclusion. This is the really important stuff, right? The purpose of an essay is to present an argument and to convince the reader of your argument. Now, an argument is not a fight, right? It's not like when you have an argument with your friends or your parents or something. An argument is a means of convincing somebody of something. In this case, your thesis or the answer to your research question. So that's what you want to convince the reader of. Again, there's multiple ways of doing this. You can do the thesis approach, that's the traditional approach, or you can do the research question approach. Um, then you want to convince the reader that your thesis is sound or that it's correct or that you've answered your research question correctly. That's what your argument is. So you're convincing somebody of your thesis using evidence, using sound reasoning, good arguments, etc. But more specifically, what are arguments? Well, in philosophy, there are a couple of different kinds of arguments. There's, to get really technical, we have deductive arguments, which are truth preserving. We have inductive arguments. So deductive arguments go from like general, you can think of them as going from general principles to reasoning out specific conclusions. Inductive arguments are like taking specific examples and reasoning out general conclusions. Um, you don't have to get super technical with this, right? Like, the arguments we've seen in some of the chapters in our textbook have been somewhat technical, like premise one, premise two, premise three, conclusion. You don't have to do it that way. You can if you want to. So you can like give the argument and then elaborate and explain and etc. That's fine. You can do that, but you don't have to. You can also do it all in ordinary language. Um, some of the more technical philosophy students, and maybe some of the computer science students too, might want to do it more like how Kim does it. And some of you might want to do it more like how I like to do it in ordinary language. Either way is fine. But what you need is to make sure that there are some premises in your argument, that the premises are true, and that the conclusion follows from the premises. If you do this, you're guaranteed to be right. That's the nice thing about logic. Um, if your if your argument is deductively valid, that means that your conclusion logically follows from the premises. And if all of your premises are true, that means your argument is sound. And if you have both of those things, you got a good argument. You also want to make your argument as straightforward as it can be, as clear and concise as it can be. And you want to avoid errors of reasoning. Um, these are what we call fallacies. And in this type of thing where it's an essay, the fallacies you're going to be most concerned with are informal fallacies. What are some fallacies, formal or informal? Logical fallacies that we might want to watch out for in a paper like this. You can put it in the chat. You can raise your hand, whatever you want. Begging the question. Yeah, that's a good one. Begging the question, by the way, is also a term that people use improperly. It's a technical term because this is a philosophy class. So you better make sure you're using this correctly, right? Um, um, so begging the question, actually, Liam says right below circular argument. Begging the question is a kind of circular argument where the conclusion that you're trying to prove actually features as a premise in your argument. And that's what makes it circular. So a very famous example of begging the question is actually the Cartesian circle, right? Well, we didn't read this part of the Meditations, but in elsewhere in the Meditations, Descartes is talking about the reason why he can trust his clear and distinct ideas. How can he be certain of his clear and distinct ideas? Well, because God is not a deceiver. So any idea that is clear and distinct, he can be certain of, because God wouldn't make it such that he couldn't trust clear and distinct ideas. Okay, fine. But how do you know there's a God who's not a deceiver? Well, I've got a clear and distinct idea of him. That is begging the question. That's a circular argument, right? So that's a question. That's what you want to. Well, that's what you want to watch out for. And you don't want to use. You don't want to use begs the question incorrectly, right? Um, this happens, unfortunately. I think I see it a lot on the news, like when I'm watching a panel discussing some kind of current events in the news, right? Could be like I don't know, what's something going on? Something not horrible. I know that the news is mostly horrible these days, but I don't know. It could be something like um, I don't know. The local blueberry harvest is not good, which begs the question: will the blueberry festival continue? Well, no, it raises the question. It doesn't beg the question. Begging the question is a technical term for a specific logical fallacy. Um, Joshua asks, can some of your premises just be assumed to be true for the sake of argument? For example, some of the premises Kim uses, we can argue against the truthful nature of them. So do our arguments have to be objectively true or arguably true? If I understand what you're asking, arguably true, right? You're trying to convince me. You're trying to convince me. Just convince me without making any big errors of reasoning, right? Because there are some things you're not going to be that we don't know, right? Um, yeah, Lee, yes. That's the feeling I get when I'm watching the news and they use that. What else? What other kinds of fallacies should we watch out for? Ad hominem is a big one. Who knows what the ad hominem fallacy is? Appeal to authority. Yep, that's a good one. Straw man is a good one. So appeal to authority is yeah, Holly, exactly. Attacks on the right or a thinker. That's ad hominem. It's Latin. It means to the person. So it's like instead of attacking the argument, I attack the person making the argument. The straw man is where you set up a weaker version of the argument and defeat that instead of the actual argument that you're trying to argue against. Appeal to authority, we mean authority like authority in the sense of like almost like papal authority. Do you know what I mean? Um, it's closely related to something called the genetic fallacy, which says that the truth of an argument turns on its source. So like Aristotle argued this, so it must be right because it was Aristotle, right? No, well, no, that's appeal to authority or a genetic fallacy. Um, there are lists of fallacies that you can look up on the internet so that you're aware of what to look out for. It's Roscoe. Uh, I would familiarize yourself with some of those so that you know what to look out for as you're writing. And you can all this is the same if you're going to use the research question approach, it's all the exact same. Remember, it's just a different way of framing things. Um, and remember that if you use the research question, you've got to give me your answer right away at the end of that first paragraph so that I know what you are going to try and convince me of. If you use the research question approach, your answer to your research question is your thesis statement, right? Structure your essay like this. Once you've got feedback for your proposal, rewrite it so that it doesn't sound like something you intend to write about, but something that you are writing about. Make it sound less like a proposal and more like an essay. Turn your area of interest into the introduction, like, what is it about? Why is it important? Tell the reader. Give me your research question and answer or your thesis. State how you're going to proceed by taking your plan of attack. And that could be your second paragraph. Expand on that. So, you introduce your topic, why it's important, give a little bit of context for the reader, give your thesis, What's the first paragraph? Second paragraph might be like, okay, so first we're going to do this. Second, we're going to do this. Third, we're going to do this. And then we're going to conclude, right? The body is where you present the arguments, the actual arguments for the actual argument, I should say. And remember that each paragraph is like a step toward your conclusion. Could be to explain a premise in your argument, to explain a concept, an important piece of evidence. Then in the conclusion, you kind of summarize, you kind of rewrite the intro. You summarize what you've discussed, restate your thesis, which is your conclusion. That's up to you, Lee. If you want to use headers, that's completely up to you. If you think that it would help make things clearer for both the reader and you, then absolutely do it. Absolutely. But it's not necessary. But yeah, I think it's nice. I actually do think it's nice when people do that. Yeah. Yeah, it's a good way. Tell them what you're going to tell them, then tell them, and then tell them what you told them. Yeah. That's good. I like that. This is when we get to the voice, um, which I am losing. Good. Yeah, it's a good approach. Yeah. So try and keep your language. Try and keep your language simple. Don't try and sound smarter by using big words unnecessarily. To paraphrase Albert Einstein, make things as simple as possible, but no simpler. Um, use a dictionary. Use a thesaurus. Mind you, not as sources, as guides. A dictionary and a thesaurus should not be used as a source. So I don't want to see anything like, according to the Oxford English Dictionary, the word mind means whatever. No, don't do that. That's not what dictionaries are for. Dictionaries only record how words are used during particular times. They record the conventional uses of words. Don't use them for sources. Use them as guides. If you want to know what would be a good word to use here, check to make sure I'm using the right one. Maybe I don't want to sound too repetitive, so I need a different word that means something similar. So you look in the thesaurus. Don't use them as sources. Use them as guides. What voice can you use? You can absolutely use the first person pronoun. So in this paper, I will argue that blah, 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 blah. If you want to sound more formal, you can use third person. This paper will argue that blah, 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 blah. And if you're feeling fancy, you can use the royal we. So in this paper, we shall argue that blah, blah, blah. Right? That's fine. Do that if you feel like it. I don't care. That's fine. Well, use the royal we then, Liam. Like a small, like a fancy knight. You could use the royal we for that. Um, One thing that really sinks people is problems with clarity. And these usually stem from one or more kinds of technical errors, like with grammar, with spelling, sometimes sentence structure. I mean, if you have bad sentence structure, chances are your grammar is going to suffer. Punctuation. It surprises me. Well, this isn't like against anyone in particular, but a lot of people at this stage of their academic career still don't have any idea how to use a semicolon. So if you're going to use a semicolon, please make sure you're using it properly. Um, Likewise with ellipses, marks, em dashes, right? Make sure you're using them properly. Yep. Yes, passive voice is okay. That's right. It will be argued that, or this paper will argue that. Yeah, that's okay. Watch out for comma splices. Watch out for sentence fragments. Watch out for problems with parallelism, right? Where like the tense changes or the like if plural singular changes, like make sure you use technical terms properly. Watch out for run-on sentences. Use your Latin abbreviations properly, right? Let's talk about Latin abbreviations, actually. This is something that I always forget to put in here. But what does this mean in the chat? Oh, I've used commas instead of periods. It should look like this. Yeah, basically it means, for example, Lee has added IE. What does IE mean? Well, it means that is. So you'd use it like you use the phrase in other words. Yeah. What about this? What does that mean? It means namely. Good guess. No, it means namely. Uh, that means etc. Like that's the short version of this right here, which means and the rest. And it's et cetera, not etc. Right? So if you're going to use Latin abbreviations, just make sure you're using the right one. Use e.g. if you're giving an example, use i.e. if you're doing like an in other words sort of thing, right? Definitely stick with scholarly sources. I think journalistic sources are good as well. A good idea is to write for an intelligent but uninformed person. You're writing for me and the TAs, but pretend we don't know anything about philosophy of mind, right? Um, Explain clearly. Don't try and dumb things down. I think you should use inclusive language. So you can use, cycle through your pronouns, right? He, she, one, they, rather than exclusively using he. Use humanity rather than mankind. Be careful with your technical terms. Uh, Try and avoid non-scholarly sources. This includes encyclopedias. Encyclopedias are not scholarly sources. That's because they're made by, well, most of them are produced by companies, not universities. So they're not scholarly sources. I don't want to see people referring to the Britannica. It's not a proper source. Watch out for those fallacies we're talking about. Watch out for those stupid, overgeneralizing sort of statements like since the beginning of time, right? Since the dawn of man, we have wondered about philosophy. No, we haven't. Don't don't do that, right? Watch your phraseology. Be careful with technical terms. Yeah, that's a quick list of do's and don'ts there. Any other questions so far since I'm losing my voice? Okay, good. So you don't have to write some kind of paradigm shifting, brilliant piece of philosophy, but you do have to try and make sure to convince the reader. So make sure your argument is sound and you use good evidence and sound reasoning. Make sure that your writing also has a bit of a flow to it. Ah, good question, Hayden. I will allow the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy and only the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy because it's actually written by philosophers and it's curated via, at Stanford University. So yes, you can use the SEP. You may not use any other encyclopedias. Definitely not Wikipedia, right? You can use Wikipedia to find sources, but you can't use the Wikipedia articles, right? But a good way of using Wikipedia is to go into the sources for the Wikipedia articles. You can find good materials there, but don't use the article itself, right? Um, yeah, you want your writing to have a bit of a flow to it. So read it out loud to yourself. That's a good way to catch mistakes and stuff that you wouldn't have noticed otherwise. Have a friend check for typos if you want, and then you can read over their essay. You might even find some examples online, but make sure they're good ones. A lot of people ask me about what sources to use. Um, it's always good to start with the readings. It's always good to it's always good to it's always good to try and use primary sources. So like you can cite my lectures, but I don't encourage that. You should be citing primary sources. My lectures are like secondary sources. You can use journalistic sources, I suppose, although I'm not really sure why that would be necessary in this class. Maybe if you were talking about some cutting edge AI development as it relates to philosophy of mind, then you might need to use a journalistic source. Um, Testimonials are okay, but you can't use them for evidence. Use them for illustration, right? If you were going to write about AI literacy, you might want to refer to, I don't know, whatever tech bro is on the Joe Rogan podcast or whatever to illustrate a lack of AI literacy, but it doesn't count as evidence. Do you see the difference? And again, avoid encyclopedias. I do permit the SEP, but nothing else. Wikipedia, again. Wikipedia is great. I love Wikipedia. I read Wikipedia for fun. Okay. I like Wikipedia. I'll sit on my phone and other people are on TikTok or whatever. I'm reading Wikipedia because it's really cool, but it is not a scholarly source. You can find good scholarly sources in the references section of Wikipedia articles, but you can't use the Wikipedia articles themselves as sources. Okay. Hmm. And remember, dictionaries, thesauruses, these are guides, not sources. They tell you how to use words, and that's it. Don't use them as sources, use them as guides, right? Unless you're doing like some kind of etymological analysis of a word, there's no need to use a dictionary, right? Okay, any questions? Well, what you're really going to be doing, as I've said multiple times here, is turning your proposal into the start of your essay. We're going to give you lots of feedback on how to do that, right? We'll make sure that you've identified a good area of interest. If you haven't, we'll suggest some changes. We'll make sure that you've got a thesis statement or a research question. If not, we're going to, again, we'll make some suggestions to you. We'll look at your plan of attack, and if it's good to go, then great. If not, we'll help you. When we can, we will suggest sources you might find helpful. Although um, that's not to say that that's not to take the burden of doing research off of you. That's still your job. But if we can think of something like, oh, hey, maybe read this paper, then we'll tell you about it. But ultimately, doing the research is your job. And of course, we'll point out any technical issues, like if there's problems with spelling, grammar, punctuation, citation, sentence structure, anything like that. We'll point it out. And I expect anything we point out in the proposal to be fixed in the final paper, right? I mean, sometimes people will put a research question and not include the answer. And I'll say, okay, you need to tell the reader what your answer is. And then in the paper, the same thing happens. That's not good. That's going to be that's a bad paper. Um, there's going to be spelling mistakes and stuff that we correct in the proposal. Well, if you're turning the proposal into the start of your paper, you should be fixing those. If they're not fixed, ugh, that's not good. Okay. So always remember, you're going to want to use our feedback, all of our comments and edits and corrections to rewrite your proposal so that you've got like the first quarter of your essay there in your proposal. Maybe you want to try something like this. When you're writing your area of interest to try and set up your thesis or your research question. Maybe you've decided to write about substance dualism. So maybe you've identified a research question. Is substance dualism a good way to explain the mental? And so you might want to argue that it's not. So here's your research question. Here's your answer, which is your thesis. In this paper, I will argue that substance dualism is not a good way to explain the mental. But you got to set that up. And I suggest the upside down pyramid approach. Go from narrow or from broad to narrow. So mind body dualism, you might say, is one of the oldest ideas in Western philosophy. Plato, for instance, advocated a form of mind body dualism. CF, that's another Latin abbreviation. It means confer. So here I'm saying confer Phaedo by Plato. Go look in the Phaedo and you'll see. Oh, there's a typo there. The form of dualism, which concerns us here, however, is Cartesian dualism or substance dualists, named after its originator Rene Descartes. And then you would cite, the Meditations there or something. And you're going to gradually narrow down, right? While philosophers from Plato to Descartes have argued in favor of some kind of mind-body dualism, few substance dualists exist today. The reason is that, as I will show in this essay, when it comes to explaining the mental, substance dualism raises more problems than it solves. And so, I will argue that substance dualism is not a viable way of explaining the mental. You see how that works? Okay, are there any questions? Okay, does not seem to be any questions. What I would like to do is take another quick 5 minute break just to give my voice a bit of a break. And then I will go over how we will evaluate your paper slash proposals. Sound good? Okay. Thanks. Thanks. I'm trying. I really don't like being sick. Um, okay, so I have 417, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Let's come back at 422. I'll see you all shortly. All right. Let's see if we can make it through this last little bit. So this is sort of the rubric it's not really laid out like a rubric, but this does, I think, lay out how I evaluate or how I will evaluate, how the TAs will evaluate your proposals and your final papers. This is also very similar to how we evaluate your reflection assignments, right? So a paper in the A range at Carleton University, the A range is 80 and up. So 80 to 84 is A minus, 85 to 89 is A. I'll talk about AA plus in a minute, but that's the A range, and that's excellent. Now, a paper in the A range will do everything I've told you to do very, very, very well. You'll have an excellently formulated original thesis statement. You'll meet the word limit for this assignment, or maybe you'll even exceed it without any unnecessary repetition. Your argument will be good. There will be no errors of reasoning. There won't be any issues with spelling, grammar, sentence structure, punctuation, anything like that. Maybe there'll be a typo here or there, but otherwise it'll be pretty good. You're going to use proper sources. You're going to cite all your sources correctly, and you're going to use those sources in a way that shows me that you understand those sources. You'll demonstrate a mastery of the concepts and the terms that we've been learning. In short, you'll meet all the objectives for the assignment. You'll do an excellent job. Any questions about papers in that range? So again, depending on how well this is like from 80 to 89. We're talking. When a paper in the B range, B is good. It's good. Could be better, but it's good. So B is 70 to 79. And if you get a B, hey, that's not a bad grade. That's a good grade. So it does a good job of following these instructions, but it could have been a little better. So you have a good thesis. It's an original thesis. It's good. Maybe it could have been a little better. Meet or exceed the word limit with maybe you repeat yourself a little bit, but it doesn't really, it's not too severe. Yeah, well, you should. I mean, well, if you need to. I don't think like aiming for 3 to 5 sources is a good start. I've seen papers in the B range that have a lot of sources and they're just not used very well, right? It's not the number of sources, it's what you do with them. But you should have a good number of good sources, right? Um, a paper in the B range will have a good argument, but maybe there's room for a little improvement, maybe sharpening things up, adding a premise here or there, but no major errors of reasoning, right? There might be a little bit of problems with the writing, but nothing major. Maybe the odd typo, maybe the odd punctuation error, but nothing that makes it very unclear. Like it's pretty clear, but maybe could be a little clearer, right? Um, you'll be using proper sources, cited properly, and you'll be using it in a way that again shows me that maybe not necessarily that you've mastered everything, but that you have a pretty good understanding of what the sources are actually doing for you, what they say. Likewise, with your understanding of the terms, theories, and concepts that we're learning about. Maybe there's some room for improvement in terms of specificity or accuracy. And yeah, so you'll meet all of the objectives. It's just it's good. It just could have been better, right? A paper in the C range. By the way, most of the papers in this class will probably fall into the high B range, like B or B plus. That tends to be the average that I see in my courses. A paper in the C range, C is satisfactory, so 60 to 69, satisfactory. So you have a thesis, but maybe it's not really that well put together. Maybe some element is missing. Maybe you've given a research question, but no answer, right? Maybe you fall a little bit short of the word limit. Maybe there's some unnecessary repetition. There might be some errors of reasoning. Um, there are problems with the writing, both in terms of spelling, grammar, sentence structure, punctuation. technical terms, etc., which make things less clear. So maybe I'm seeing a lot of run-on sentences. Maybe there are a lot of sentence fragments, right? And that makes it hard to read. Like I realize this is quite subjective, but a paper in the A range, I can just read it, understand it, and great. Paper in the B range, I can read it, understand it, and maybe I have to put a few comments and corrections here and there. A C range is hard to get through. Paper in the C range is hard to get through. I'm reading that and I'm just like, oh, another run on sentence, highlight run on sentence. Or there's an error of reasoning and I have to point out why that's an error of reasoning. Like a C paper is hard to get through. Um, you might be using non-scholarly sources, or you might be using sources that are not cited correctly. You might be using sources, but you're using them in a way where it's not clear that you understand what those sources are actually doing for you. Um, a satisfactory understanding of terms, concepts, and theories. Like maybe you seem to know what dualism means, but you seem to be equivocating between substance dualism and property dualism would be a sort of mistake I might see there. Um, you're just kind of just squeaking by, but it could have been a lot better, right? Paper in the D range, that's poor. That's 50 to 59. That's poor. A poor job of following the instructions I've given you today. Really badly put together thesis, or perhaps not even a thesis at all. Very bad argument. Lots of errors of reasoning. No coherent argument. It might fall short of the word limit. It might contain lots of unnecessary repetition, substantial problems with the writing, which make it really difficult to get through. Relying on no sources or non-scholarly sources or scholarly sources that you're using in a way that indicates that you do not know what those sources are talking about. Um, lack a demonstrated lack of understanding of important terms, theories, and concepts. So you're just barely squeaking by. It's like, yeah, you wrote the paper, I guess, but bad thesis, bad sources, not long enough, et cetera, et cetera. I don't actually see a lot of papers in the D range, um, but you never know. And of course, if you're late, like maybe you would have gotten an A, but you're 4 days late and you didn't reach out for an extension. That's going to put you in the D range, right? So it can happen. Um, you've got to really, really mess up to fail. Like no effort, bad writing, just it's got to be absolutely terrible. I don't think I've ever given an F on an essay assignment. Like that wasn't late, but it's possible. It's got to be pretty bad for me to give you an F. Like, because I'm not the most I'm not like I'm tough but fair. I'm not the easiest grader, but I'm certainly not the hardest marker. Now, maybe you want to get an A plus. That's 90 to 100. Well, almost nobody's getting 100 because the perfect essay does not exist. But you can get an A plus by impressing me. So it's going to do everything that a paper in the A range does, but it's going to be like flawless. An A paper could be really good and maybe have one or two typos. You will have no typos. You'll go well beyond the expectations for a second year philosophy course. Your paper is going to be very original, very well researched, very well argued. It's going to look more like something I might read in a fourth year course or a graduate seminar, right? You can achieve an A plus, but it's tricky. It's hard, you know, but it is doable. Any questions? I should say this is something I have not said in other essay writing lectures, but this is all based on how I approached writing papers when I was an undergrad and a grad student, um, as well as how some of my professors have evaluated papers. There's probably going to be some stuff I haven't thought of. And so it's never a bad idea to look at other essay writing tutorials, which you can find on the internet, you can find on Purdue's online writing lab. Read as much as you can about how to write a really good essay, and that will be to your benefit. Are there any questions about any of these instructions? I will answer them if there are. And then if you want to, we can brainstorm a little bit, although my voice is giving out on me. So, well, it doesn't seem like there are any questions. Does anyone want to do a little bit of brainstorming? Oh, that's good. If you've got a whole list of ideas, that's good. Then the problem is narrowing down which one. So my advice, like if you're like Lee and you have a whole bunch of ideas, and I'm not saying Lee you're having trouble deciding, but imagine you have like five potential topics and you don't know which one to write about. Write about the one that gets you the most excited. Write about the one that you keep coming back to and thinking about. That's the one you want to write about because that's going to be more fun. It's going to be more fun for you to write, and it's going to be more fun for me to read. So if you've got like five possible topics, but you keep coming back to this one, that's the one you want to write about. Um, Maybe you have an idea you want to run it by me. We can do that. We can do that now. Possible idea for a topic. Because if not, I'd like to go and give my voice a rest. So please, if you have questions, let me know now. Something about computers and consciousness. Yeah. Yeah. Just could a computer be conscious? That's fine. There's a lot you can do with that. Yeah, likely. Yeah, exactly. Go with the riskier and exciting one. Yeah, good idea. Hayden says defending physicalism and compatibilism, maybe some of Daniel Dennett stuff. Yeah, that sounds awesome. Yeah, or critiquing it. You should be critiquing, even if you're defending, you got to do a little bit of critiquing, right? Critiquing is not like, oh, this is bad. Critiquing is like, what's the good and the bad, right? So when we're being critical of something, we're not just, we're not being dismissive. We're looking at the positives and the negatives, bringing everything out into the open, as it were. Yeah, is it specific enough? The computers and consciousness. Well, try it. This is a great idea. Like use, have other students talk to other students, or talk to ChatGPT or myself. Um, what can you do with computers and consciousness? Well, you could argue like that a computer could or could not, in principle, be conscious. Right? That's one idea. Um, we'll talk about toward the end of the class. We're going to talk about the hard problem of consciousness. Could we make a conscious machine if we haven't worked out how to explain how we are conscious? Or maybe you'd want to argue that a machine could never be conscious. There's so many things you could do with it. It really depends on what direction you want to go in. But there's a lot of potential there. I would keep thinking about it and make a decision which direction you want to go in. Yeah. Yeah, definitely read ahead. And for anyone interested in writing about consciousness, check out Susan Blackmore's book, Consciousness: An Introduction. I use that book in a first year seminar I teach on consciousness. It is incredibly clear, incredibly accessible. I use the second edition, but you can use whatever edition you want to. It's very fun to read, and it's available via the Carleton Library. So yeah, I'll put that in here. So consciousness, an introduction, and I use the second edition. and that's by Susan Blackmore. Very good book. Yeah, and like so I'd make the same recommendation to Joshua, right? Like if you're leaning toward, talking about uploading consciousness or creating a consciousness, I mean, all of this is not new, right? Your Elon Musks and everything talking about merging with machines and the singularity. None of this is new. All of this ties back to some very, very fundamental questions that have been around in philosophy for a long time. So, could you upload your consciousness to a machine? What if I'm already a conscious machine? Check out, and I hope this isn't self-indulgent, but a lot of my lectures from other courses, like Minds and Machines, like Consciousness, like I'm having trouble thinking of other ones. Not a lot of my AI stuff, but some of it is on my YouTube channel. Don't be afraid to get inspiration from like science fiction. I like that. Some of you mentioned you were taking Phil Hoyek's uh, philosophy and pulp culture course. So if you're watching, maybe Phil's showing you an episode of Star Trek, and you get some inspiration. Like, yeah, I love that stuff. Do that. You know, um, simulation, like simulation theory, because that's kind of connected to like Berkeley's subjective idealism, or maybe even Leibniz in some respects. I don't know what argument what you could specifically argue, but it's not out of the question that you could do something on that topic, right? As long as you could tie it to the mental in some way, which I think you could, right? If I'm in a simulation, then am I the only one in that simulation? That's solipsism, right? If I believe that I am, then I'm a solipsist. If I believe that all the other people are, NPCs or something, right, then I'm a solipsist, right? Yeah, yeah, that's true. So, think about it. You have time. There's time to think about what you'd like to do. Don't be afraid to get imaginative. Don't be afraid to get creative. I like to see really creative, imaginative stuff. That sometimes is what makes the difference between an A and an A plus. Um, Anything else? No, that's fine. You can have that. I would put it in a figure. So, figure one, a doodle of Plato's chariot analogy. Yeah, you could do that. By Lee Condi. So, the author has created their own illustrations in this case, right? And that's fine. That's one of the fun parts about Susan Blackmore's book, actually, is I think it's her son has drawn all of the little figures in that book. So yeah, you can do that too. And of course, so you're going to want to refer to the primary source there too. I forget which dialogue it is. But you're going to want to cite Plato, and there's a special way of citing Plato, where you have to use what are called Stephanus numbers. Likewise with Aristotle, you're going to be using Becker numbers. But look that up. If you just Google how to cite Plato, it's explained uh, on the internet. But yeah, if you want to have your own figures, tables, whatever, you can do that. Just label it, figure one, figure two, figure three, and then you're going to have a table of figures. And you can find instructions how to do this online. It's something that a lot of you will have to do if you write an honors thesis or a master's thesis or a PhD thesis. Chances are you're going to have some figures in there. So you're going to have a table of contents and also a table of figures. So if you wanted to put those in here, it's not necessary, but you could if you wanted to, right? You could have a table of contents for your subheadings and a table of figures for your figures. Up to you. Ah, anything else? Remember, if you're not sure, reach out to me. I won't be able to read over your proposals before they're due, but if you're like thinking to yourself, I'd like to write about this topic, but I'm not sure if that would fit, don't be afraid to reach out and check with me, and I'll tell you whether I think that might be a good idea or not. Are there any other questions? Okay, Holly's good. Push is good. All right. Okay, yeah, yeah, we are ending a bit early, but again, it's this is just an instruction thing, and yeah, I'm sick. I'm pretty sick, guys. It's been a week, so I hope I feel better soon. I'm surviving on Dayquil right now. That's the only reason I'm able to do this. So thanks for all your well wishes, everybody. I hope I feel better too, and reach out if you have any questions. I'll talk to you. Well, I'll see you on Wednesday. We're going to talk about machine functionalism on Wednesday. So we'll see you then. Thanks, everybody. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for all the well wishes. I'll see you next time. Okay. Bye for now.